Hi guys, this is GSMDome.com and I'm here with a review of the Motorola Moto G86. It feels like just yesterday we were testing the Moto G85. We're dealing with a sort of entry mid-ranger that comes here with a very much appealing case for the youngsters on account of the blue hue and also a rather solid set of specs if you're aiming for mid-range. Now, it's an OLED screen, that's the first advantage of the handset, a superior refresh rate and a camera you can actually rely on. It's supposed to be a dual one according to some sites. I'm going to show it's actually a triple one. So yeah, we also have some pretty narrow bezels for the segment. It's gunning for around $250, which is actually not that bad. It's, I would say, decent enough even for gaming. If you're looking inside of the specs and at the processor and at the quantity of RAM, you should actually be satisfied by the Moto G86 5G. 8 gigs of RAM plus some extra boost plus a large resolution front camera and some more goodies to discover as we progress. So let's start the review. First of all, I'm going to talk about the design, and we're dealing here with a handset which brings quite the update from the G85. Their certification for IP68 and IP69 now, you can submerge it in water up to 1.5 meters for a maximum of 30 minutes. It will have zero problems. You can also splash it with hot water, hot jets of water, and that's pretty cool, and also has dust protection. The predecessor was only certified for protection against accidental splashes. Plus we have military certification, so it can take a rough or tumble, survive extreme conditions, vapors, vibrations and humidity, so that's pretty cool. And we have a narrow screen here, narrow bezel screen with a screen to body ratio of around 90%, which is amazing for the price you're paying. Now the colors, well, they include the Pantone Spellbound, Golden Cypress, Cosmic Sky and Chrysanthemum, basically green, blue, violet and red. When it comes to measurements, below 8mm in thickness, 7.8mm and only 185 grams in weight. A pretty grippy backside that imitates leather, so, and also a flat frame which aids with the grip. It's made of polycarbonate, just so you know. Now the screen we have here sounds pretty familiar and pretty similar to what we got on the predecessor. I'm talking about a quality OLED, just for the people who are wondering. And let's see what we're dealing with here. So it's actually a P-OLED, 6.67 inches, 120 Hz refresh rate. There's no LTPO, but still pretty satisfying. Full HD Plus resolution, and well, Gorilla Glass 5 from the G85 has been swapped for Gorilla Glass 7i. Now the screen to body ratio has actually dropped. It's 89% now. The predecessor has 90, so yeah, they're pretty close. Very narrow bezels, much narrower than the Galaxy A36, A56 and other rivals. Okay, so of course you probably noticed that we have wide view angles, have large dynamic range here, large palette of colors, and take it from me, it handles sunlight like a champ, so no problem with the contrast. Now, we did do some measurements and we achieved in brightness 858 lux units. So yeah, there's that. This is actually a downgrade from the predecessor, which achieved 926 lux units. I see that we at least surpassed the Motorola G86 Pro, Xiaomi 13T Pro, Galaxy A36 and iPhone 16e, which is actually not that bad. Now, we move on and we see the other specs of the handset. As I said before, it's decent even for gaming. So if you go to the About Phone section, you'll see that we have the RAM quantity here. You can also achieve a RAM boost. You have AI Auto, and you can also add things up to 16 gigs of RAM. At its core, you're going to get 8 gigs of RAM and a MediaTek Dimensity 7300 4nm processor. You also have 256 gigabytes of storage, and some version also, some areas will get 12 gigs of RAM. There's also a micro SD card slot, just so you know. And let's start talking about the performance. We have the benchmarks here, so let's go. First of all, Antutu to 10. This is the score, just above Realme 12 Pro Plus and above the Oppo Reno 13 FS. Now, things are important here. The predecessor had the Snapdragon 6S Gen 3, so we have climbed a few points here, and we also surpassed the Motorola H50 Fusion and Galaxy A36. Even compared to the G85, there's been an upgrade. That one had 4083K points. In Geekbench 6, in the multi-core subtest, we're above Motorola H50 Fusion, which is a compliment, and Moto G75 and the Nubia Flip 2, which is supposed to be pricier than this model. Now, when it comes to the throttling test, usually mid-rangers perform better than flagships, and this one as well. We only lost 7% performance after an intense 15 minutes of testing. Now, we go off in the temperature area, only 36 degrees Celsius achieved in benchmarks, which is fine in my book, and in games even lower, 35.8. We didn't run any intensive games, but still Asphalt should be pretty relevant nowadays. Now on the battery front, things are still being kept decent. Motorola hasn't quite jumped on the bandwagon of 7000 mAh battery, at least not on this series. Now the G86 comes with a 5200 mAh unit, just so you know, and it doesn't come with a charger in the box. And just for a quick mention, it charges at 30 watts via wire. There is no wireless charging. When it comes to the actual battery usage, we achieved 23 hours and 20 minutes. That's continuous HD video playback. It's very close to what a Nothing Phone 3a Pro achieves, if you want a comparison term. And I see that the Galaxy S24 regular edition is also around the same area. It's a 66 spot from the 600 phones we've tested. It's actually not that bad. By the way, the Moto G85 was pretty close with 23 hours and 53 minutes, but also a bit higher. When it comes to continuous usage, 11 hours and 59 minutes. It's at the middle of our ranking, close to the OnePlus 11 and beating the G75, which is actually not bad, but nowadays there are mid-rangers reaching the 20-hour mark, and that may be a problem, so you may be tempted by a Realme phone. Yeah, there's that. The predecessor did much better. By the way, G85 was at 14 hours. When it comes to the charging, we are required 1 hour and 17 minutes for a full juice up, and after 30 minutes you're at 47%. We relied on a Baseus 100 watt gallium nitride charger, and in the box you only get the USB cable. By the way, there's also a case in the box if you want to protect this phone, and it's slightly sloped camera. As far as the acoustics are concerned, there's been a while now that Motorola has been offering OLED screens and stereo speakers, even on lower priced phones, this included. So stereo speakers, one at the bottom, and at the top we have here the earpiece. There's no audio jack. That's been a trend ever since the iPhone 7, if I remember correctly. Now, let me just look up our typical acoustic sample test, and here we go. It's actually a pretty basic setup, which actually reminds me of the experience which I felt on the Motorola H50 Neo. The bottom speaker is doing the hard work with the volume and the bass. The top speaker delivers the high notes. It's a bit strident if you don't decrease the volume at around 70%, so best remember that. Now let's see some measurements. By the way, the bass is fine, but the high notes not that impressive. If you go to the volume power here, 83.3 decibels at the top and 86.3 decibels at the bottom. Bottom speaker a bit more powerful, as you can see for yourself here. Now you are at the middle of the ranking, I would say, with the 243rd spot. I see we're beating the Galaxy S21, which is old now, several other old phones here. HMD Pulse Pro is probably the newest one. Also beating the iPhone SE 2020, Motorola Razr 40, so not much novelty, maybe the Nothing Phone 2a. A more relevant one is the gaming score. When we're playing games, we also use the same decibel meter, and let's see how that panned out. So we go here to the volume power, achieving 95.2, which is just decent. What are the models we're competing with here, you may be wondering. So let's see. Now, with 95, we should be all set to even fight some flagships. I see that with the equal of the Galaxy A56, pretty close to the A36, which is just slightly higher, and just a bit below the S23 Ultra and the Realme 14 Pro Plus. As usual, Motorola is providing a Moto app, and as usual, they're providing quite a few tweaks. Personalization is one of them, but also you're getting your enjoyment with the media controls from here. And you should also have some Dolby Atmos features like audio effects, spatial audio, smart audio, music, movie, game, podcast, surround, and you can even customize with this graphical equalizer. Extra treble, manual, bass boost, vocal boost, and surround virtualizer. Okay, that's about it as far as the acoustics are concerned. Time to talk camera. So first things first, I'm actually pretty impressed by the selfie camera we have here. It's a 32 megapixel shooter, and it's supposed to film in 4K, which is not bad for the price you're paying. At the back side, it looks like we have 3 sensors. Officially, we have 2 sensors, but let me just talk about it. So the main sensor is a Sony Lithia 600. It's a 50 megapixel sensor, f1.9 aperture, dual pixel, PDAF, optical image stabilization, then 8 megapixel ultra wide, which also does your macro. There's a third sensor, there's a monochrome one, which collects data about colors, and the camera interface includes, I would say, rather typical options for a moto, which you'll see in an instant. So we got your more section with ultra res, time-lapse, panorama, tilt shift, scan, photo booth, and dual capture video. We got your pro mode with tweaks to the exposure, ISO, shutter, white balance, and focus. There's the portrait area, there's the night vision as well, and finally there's the photo area, plus a few filters included. There's the video section. Once again, I'm surprised we are getting 4K on the front camera. Had to confirm it, couldn't help it. And finally, slow motion is part of the package. That's that. Let's talk about the samples. Okay, so let's talk about the selfies first. We have quite a few shots here, and let's discuss them. So the selfie camera is a pleasant surprise. I mean, I know it has 32 megapixels, but it triggers some pretty expressive shots. I'm talking about realistic colors, level of detail, and palpable textures. Quite a bit of light is captured by this camera, and the focus is spot on during our selfies. Not only the regular ones, we also have an excellent bokeh, which highlights the subject cut in front of the background. Now, even at nighttime, the selfies were quite fine, as you can see in these shots. Usually, mid-range phones don't deliver as much in selfies during the night, but here it did. Back to the daytime, we can talk about the colors achieved by this handset. So I have to say that we're dealing here with a day of June at 7 in the morning, so we could finish the gallery before the proper sun came out. Still, it was about 28-29 degrees Celsius. So the vegetation is correctly rendered. I'm talking about the hues rendered here. I would say they're a bit colder than we're used to, but still things in general were pretty realistic, if not a bit undersaturated at times. You can see several more colors here. I feel that sometimes details may be lacking, particularly in the ultra-wide shots, but the close-ups were truly amazing in detail. And also the focus is very accurate on these flowers, excuse me. Perhaps so much so that it's even better than other phones in a similar price range or below $300. This one, for example, is an achievement because we don't have a telephoto camera, we're running on digital zoom, and the camera is doing a fine job at it. At 2 or 3x, you're delivering excellent results, and we also have shots of a cat here, not only of this bumblebee. Yeah, definitely something to remember here. Now let's find those cat shots. This is a memorable shot of a cat in the window trying to get some chill in this very warm weather. And once again, I'm actually surprised by what the zoom can deliver here, even though we're only dealing with digital zoom. Even the colors stay spot on. And once again, only the ultra wide may produce some deformation of the images and of the colors. So these have been the daytime shots. Pretty impressed overall. Now let's talk about the low light shots. We have quite a few of those as well. Okay, so during the low light, we actually caught a bit of sunset here, the beautiful blue hues. After the golden hour comes the blue hour, and we captured it in all its majesty. I'm shocked to see that the streetlight halos aren't that big. Usually they're a bit enhanced for no reason, and the camera can definitely handle light sources like a champ without encountering any sort of problems. The colors are also kept decently. I'm talking about the vegetation, the colors of the flags, the couriers and delivery guys, things like that. Even though this is a bit larger halo and some reflections, things aren't as bad as I expected it to be. Now, when there are moving subjects, there's a bit of ghosting here and there, I'll admit that. And in some of the yellower areas, you notice a bit of noise here when the, well, clarity and details are a bit lacking. But in general, I was happy by what the camera captured here, particularly with the night mode activated, even though even without the night mode things were decent. Now, we have talked plenty about photos. Now let's also talk about the videos. So I think we actually can rely on a dedicated app for that. Okay, so once again, we're filming in 4K at 30 frames per second, and there is no super steady mode, so just electronic gyro OIS stabilization. Let me start off with a I would say pretty decent selfie video. Compared to what you're paying, things are fine, focus-wise, clarity-wise, detail-wise, and color-wise. Now we move further and we have a taste of what the focus is all about. Pretty nicely focused on these roses. And we also have a lot of detail here and a sparkly shiny sun on that bench there. Let's see if we can also change the point of focus. And try this one. Several points of focus and focus on the background. It works pretty fine. By the way, nice colors. The sun didn't make these colors too intense or weirdly saturated. By the way, these colors also look nice. It feels like a Pixel from a few years ago. A Pixel A, like something like a 7A or 8A or something like that. Not bad in the end. We're also walking around, testing the stabilization. For a phone without a super steady mode, things are fine, but there's a lot of saturation and exposure of the vegetation when caught in full sunlight. Totally unrealistic green here, have to admit, that's what's happening. Okay, and at the night time, we have these shots here. I mean, of course, the zoom fades away a bit, but we're not here for zoom. Things get a bit shakier as well when moving around. The light sources are amplified and the image tends to vibrate once again when you're moving. The reds look nice though. And even more videos here. The most important thing about these nighttime videos is the fact that we're capturing a lot of light and the clarity is fine. Stabilization drops a bit and so does the zoom quality. All in all, impressed by the colors during the day, the close-ups and the selfies. Now we're moving on to connectivity. This phone seems to provide it all. I'm talking about the fact we have Wi-Fi 6 dual band, we have 5G, eSIM support, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, BDS, QZSS. There's also NFC and there's also Bluetooth available here, 5.4, USB-C 2.0 port at the bottom side, and as usual Android Auto and things like that. Okay, so we did some tests here with the usual speed test application. Let's see what came out. So when it comes to the Wi-Fi connectivity, 369 megabits/second downloads, 379 megabits/second uploads on a 1 GB connection, and on 5G, 545 over up to 117 megabits/second in download and upload respectively, which is actually not that bad. Now software wise, let's see what we're getting here. This is Motorola, it's been owned by Google and as usual has some perks to do with that. So we have here a device that's running on Android 15 with a Motorola interface on top of it and something that's called Moto Hello UX. We're getting unofficially, from an unofficial source, 2 years of Android updates, 4 years of security updates, and you can customize the experience using the Moto app. So you can definitely go here, you can personalize themes, fonts, lock screen colors, icon shapes, display text size, layout, fingerprint animation, sounds, and a dark mode. These are the gestures you can rely on. These are some tips if you're new to Android 15. And of course, Moto Secure is also here, part of the package to make things secure. You can get a secure folder. You can lock applications. You can do a pin pad scramble, device unlock, find my phone and more. Display settings, attentive display and lock screen. And of course, those that have to do with games are also included here. You have gaming features, you have a special sidebar for it. You can customize capture modes, do not disturb and other things like that. You're also getting the family space. See if you want to put parental controls for the little one, monitor him as he comes from home school, create a special profile for the elderly. You can do all of that here from the family space. And of course, you also have Moto Unplugged. If you want to relax and unplug from your smartphone, you can only have basic core features like calling, texting, and the camera. Get rid of all stressing notifications. If you want the opposite, you can connect to a PC, tablet, watch, and things like that, and you can explore these features. You can do app streaming, you can simulate a mobile desktop, have your phone mirrored on the PC, use it as a webcam or hotspot, lock a PC, use a smart keyboard or cross control, share a cursor between them, and do the share hub. As far as the AI is concerned, keep this button pressed on the side. You're triggering Gemini, and I have to turn up the volume to properly enjoy Gemini Live. I can definitely show it some, I would say, vegetables in the fridge and get suggestions for cooking, show it some furniture and tell it how to be arranged around the house, do some research online, and of course you also have circle to search, so you can circle things that appear of interest to you, like For example, this phone here, it can also recognize music and translate what's on the screen, and also do follow-up searches. These are visual matches that properly match the phone. Okay, that's pretty much it. We also have a RAM boost feature and the experience is almost stock. I don't see any trace of Moto AI here. That's reserved for the Edge series, I think. Okay, so it's time for the verdict, as you probably guessed. On the Pro side, I would say that the design is pretty iconic. We have good looking Pantone colors, IP69 certification, military certification, a flat screen with a large brightness and narrow bezels, micro SD card slot, you don't see that every day. Quality selfie camera, also you don't see that every day. Quality bokeh, close-ups and realistic colors, Wi-Fi 6 upgrade compared to the predecessor. On the con side, the battery doesn't convince that much. There's also Moto G86 power, by the way, if you want more. The filming isn't that well stabilized, and the powerful sun leads to quite a bit of overexposure. Also, on the con side, the software is limited in support, only 2 years of Android updates, USB-C 2.0 port at the bottom only, maximum 30 watts charging and no charger in the box. So, in the end, I would say it's a decent phone for a youngster who just took his exam. I'm talking about the 14-year-old exam before heading to high school. That's, I think, is the target audience. Some minor gaming, some decent shots, some selfies. It could be even a girl's phone if you pick up the pink or purple version, so there's that. I wished for a bigger battery with a, I would say, a larger battery life. That's basically the only drawback I could find that really pulls the phone a bit down from anybody's preferences. Maybe faster Wi-Fi, but you are getting some extras like the decent 4K filming at the front camera, snappy UI, all of these productivity features for corporate heads and things like that. Sufficient RAM, micro SD, and decent 5G. At the end of the day, it's only the battery that may find you hesitating, but we have a special Moto G86 power for that, or if you want, Realme. So, excellent selfies and fluid software. That's it from us. Bye bye.